All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Natty News Daily Weekly segment, which is very recently turning into semi-weekly. So I apologize for the delay in updates for our 150 listeners on YouTube. But yeah, so we're back. We've got a couple stories I wanted to cover, working behind the scenes to clarify some different things, and which I will touch on today, as well as just been super busy and the sport's kind of quiet right now, which is not a bad thing. Not a bad thing whatsoever. So we're going to dive into it. You can see right up on the screen, Bodybuilding Down Under, shout out to their podcast, Lawrence, all those guys down there, doing a great job spreading the word, just like we are up this way. And they had on Eric Helms on episode 90 of their podcast. So I tuned into that because I wanted to see what they chatted about. And it kind of reflected some of the conversations that Eric and myself and Eric and the Natty News team have had about where the sport is going, the changes that have happened within the sport recently. And I think it's a great episode. So if you guys haven't already, tune into that episode. But yeah, like I said, they talk in detail about the new NPC mandate for natural bodybuilding, why Eric thinks that maybe it's not in the best interest of the true natural community to support that endeavor, why maybe it's more of a PR stunt and not a true vested interest in theirs for the betterment of the sport, which I think a lot of us probably would echo those sentiments. So, like I said, tune into that episode. I think it was a good one. Definitely conversations that need to be had, right? Questions need asked, answers need, defined, especially when it comes to the drug testing side of things, because we know that even within the true natural federations, that is something that's a point of contention across the board. So for another federation to jump in, one that is not known for testing of any sort, we want to make sure some things are kind of written and in place before I would trust it. So we'll see, this being the inaugural year of this expansion into the natural bodybuilding realm, we'll see how that goes. We'll definitely be trying to get some like in-person content and coverage and first-person reports of what actually goes down because unfortunately you can't always trust what's said on the internet. So good episode, guys. Appreciate what you guys are doing. Appreciate Natural Bodybuilding Worldwide for sponsoring them and helping them kind of get their message out. So, yeah, good episode there, and tune in if you haven't already. Moving on to two of three for the stories. So, Rico, out of the Netherlands, or at least competing at the Netherlands show for the WMBF. This is one that I honestly don't know too much about. Not the athlete, but the actual post itself. This was something that left me, Leroy, and Dan scratching our heads. So if someone involved with the WMBF Netherlands listens to this, let us know, right? Wasn't able to find an answer before I reported on this one. But so if you read through the caption there while I'm rambling, I might lose my pro status, which is ironic about the story I'm about to cover. Um, This is for a different reason. I might lose my pro status if I keep doing what I am doing. Now, you could jump to a lot of conclusions there. However, what this individual, Rico, is talking about is outsizing his pro status. So now for this off season, I'll be working a full year at the very least to gain some muscle mass, which can put me outside the accepted weight for my pro status. The maximum weight is 70 kilograms on stage in my case. Last time lowest weight depleted was 68.8. If I'm coming heavier and surpassing the 70 kgs, I have to get another pro card in another division. Now, I've been around the sport a decent amount of time. We've never heard of this. Now, this might very well be the rule in some international affiliates of certain federations, but this to me is kind of mind-boggling, right? Like we've all heard of weight caps. Normally in the IFBB, individuals have to lose for classic or 212 or whatever, open is open. They have to meet those requirements. But in the natural realms, I mean, yeah, there are weight caps to be a lightweight, a heavyweight, a middleweight, which are pretty flexible because it really just depends on who shows up and how they break things down. Um, but there's not many individuals that have to worry about a weight cap in general. You kind of just are where you are, and maybe if you're on the cusp, you deplete a little bit more if you want to be lighter. Um, but to have your pro card tied to a weight class seems a little absurd to me. So Yeah, I don't know. What are your guys' thought on that? Like, if I feel like it's such a small case scenario of like what individual would be able to go from a lightweight to a middleweight to a heavyweight within the natural realms, unless you're already right on that cusp. In which case, I think that's just a crazy rule, right? To go through all that work to earn a pro card, which is hard in most situations, especially in the international realm where the competition is very fierce and the number of competitions are very few, to win it as a lightweight and then advance in your training career and lose that pro status just because you arguably got better as an athlete by gaining more mass, it seems a little crazy to me, right? So yeah, maybe something was lost in translation here. Maybe I'm not understanding the rules. Maybe there's a great valid point and reason for this rule. I don't know, but I would love some commentary on this one for sure from either executives within the org, athletes in that part of the world. Just wanted to draw some eyes on this because this is interesting. And if this is a real thing, man, that puts a lot of pressure. Just got to bring the conditioning, I guess, if you gain more muscle, right? Just get leaner and leaner. But then we run into the idea of like, at what point are you losing that truly like perfect package because you're over dieted? And that's a whole different argument within itself. So interesting story nonetheless. And now we are moving on. All right. If you recognize those individuals, this is from Worlds this past year, WMBF. So a couple weeks ago, we covered the new rule changes with the WMBF. Dan and I, in one of our true podcast segments, which if you haven't watched that episode, please do. Or actually, no, it was one of my weekly segments. I just brought Dan in to temper myself. That's what it was. The WMBF announced their 2024 rules, which in that document, which again, interesting, I wanted to point out, you can't find that document on the new website. I don't know if that was lost in the conversion that they're going through because they went from an old website to this new one and things aren't transferring over. It doesn't seem like from what they've said and from what I've tried to find. So there used to be a link that directly went to the rules, which is now dead on Instagram. So if you go to their Instagram and hit the rules, it brings you to a dead page. If you go to the new website, there is no rules. What you can do is if you go to the frequently asked questions and scroll all the way down through this page, which looks like it's still under work because the formatting's a little bit odd. Let's see right here. I just won my pro card. When do I have to compete? So if you read there, and if you read the original document, which I do have a copy of, so if individuals are asking for it, which I would assume are still their official rules for 24, because it was released a month ago, maybe, it says that they have gotten rid of the 2-year rule for pros to compete. Great. We've all argued against timelines. It got rid of the 1-year rule for new pros to have to compete to validate their pro status. Great. Got rid of a timeline. But then it said that new pros must debut, or not even debut. New pros have to compete their next show with the WMBF to validate the pro card, right? So a new pro shall first compete in a WMBF pro event prior to competing with other federations to value their WMBF professional membership opportunity. Now, in the other episodes, I went on about this. Watch those. You'll know my thoughts. I don't think this is a great idea, especially in the US where there's shows every weekend. There's lots of federations and pros close proximity. I just don't think that this honors the athlete. This is very restrictive. So for a statement to come out saying we're no longer restricting our athletes to these timelines, but then put a more restrictive rule in place, I don't love it. I've gone in great detail with the individuals involved about how I don't love it. We've had many conversations about that. But I wanted to clarify the exact extent of this rule, which I have. So listen, if you are an amateur and you intend to compete with the WBF in 2024, if you win your pro card and you compete with another federation before you compete with the WMBF as a pro, they will strip your pro card. Done deal. Have it in writing. It's been said. There's no gray area on it. I wanted to clarify. Didn't want it to be one of these, maybe this person, maybe that person. The statement was said if the WMBF finds out that you compete with any other federation before you compete as a WMBF pro, you will lose your pro status. Reporting on it. Not even going to give my thoughts on it. So here is what you could do. There's a couple situations, right? There are people that are diehard WNBF. They only want to compete WNBF. Great. This doesn't apply to you then, right? You're going to compete as an amateur, hopefully turn pro, compete as a pro, go out that way. That's great. No problem. Rule doesn't restrict you whatsoever. There are also individuals who will want to compete across multiple federations. So you have two different options. Save your WNBF shows so later in the season, compete elsewhere first, hopefully win pro cards there if you want to, then compete INBF, potentially go pro, and then you have more options later in the year when there are more pro shows for the WNBF to compete as a pro to validate your pro card. It's a timing game then, right? Because you don't know when you're going to win your pro card. So this is all big gamble, right? You could try for this one show, have a whole season of shows leading up to it, try for your WNBF pro card and not get it. And that's likely what would happen, right? One person per show gets their pro card in most cases. So the odds that it's going to be you, unless you're a top athlete, I don't know, right? But you could compete INBA, OCB, NGA, all those early in the year, and then save the WNBF for last. It's a gamble that you're trying to make. There are other situations that's probably, if you want to do it that way, the best way to do it, I guess, right? Or the other situation is you compete as you would normally. Should you win your pro card wherever in the season that is, you now have to put the rest of your season on hold until the next WNBF Pro Show, wherever that may be. It may be local. You may be flying to Canada. You may be flying to the West Coast. You may, I don't know. But if you want to validate that pro card, now that is your only option. I don't love it, but if those are the rules, those are the rules. So if you want to validate that WNBF pro card, you have to pause your season, compete nowhere else in no other federation until you step on stage as a WNBF pro, wherever that might be. Now, whether or not you're arguably ready to do that, whether or not that's financially feasible for you to do, that's up to you to decide. Each athlete must decide what they want to do and where they want to compete, right? So just reporting on it. Now, I will say that this rule was told to me to have come up, and the reasons for the rule has changed multiple times. Originally, I was told that the rule was put in place simply because it was understood that all other natural federations would validate the WNBF Pro card. So should you win your WNBF Pro card, you wouldn't have to compete as an amateur anywhere else because every other natural organization honors that. So you could just step on a pro stage with OCB, USBF, NGA, INBA. That is not the case. Now, what I have done is I have reached out to multiple of these organizations to find out who does value and honor other memberships. So, INBA, USBF, two big ones in the US. If you are a pro in any organization, they will honor your pro status. You can compete as a pro with them, right? So you win your OCB pro card, you can go compete in the USBF championships, any pro show, whatever you want. Same with the INBA, PNBA. They want athletes across federation lines, and they're willing to accept those other memberships so long as you pay your dues. WNBF, we know, accepts no other pro cards. OCB does not accept other pro cards. You must qualify for an OCB pro show by competing as an OCB amateur and win the pro card there, as well as IPE. And that is a new rule. That is starting now. You have a little bit of time on this one. March, late March, I think March 31st, this rule goes into place with the IPE NANBF. So if you are a US Midwest competitor, listen up. Until that March 31st date, if you are a pro in another federation, you can pay the IPE pro dues and they will transfer your pro card to the IPE. So you will have the ability to do that. After that date, they will no longer be accepting other pros, and you must qualify through the NANBF to compete as an IPE pro. So if you're looking at IPE Worlds, and I know there are some competitors that like to do that show because there are some good pros that go there regularly, pay the dues now, get in before you have to go through this whole requalification process, right? So hopefully that answers some of your questions. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of a warning so you don't compete like you normally would and have your pro card stripped. We're here to update. We're here to speak for the athlete. So if you guys have questions, concerns, stories you want me to cover, if you like this segment, if you have thoughts on it, comment on the YouTube, comment on the Instagram, DM me, DM the Natty News Daily team. We're here to support you guys. We want to cover what you guys want us to cover, and we are here to back and represent you. So I will see you guys in the next one.